if we're thinking about the bioactive soy isoflavones, though, potentially having some benefit, I'm of the understanding that as you process soy, usually that means that the soy isoflavone content actually goes down, which is the opposite, I think, of what some people think. They sort of think of a soy protein isolate or perhaps a TVP as a very concentrated source of soy isoflavones. So perhaps you can talk to the amount of soy isoflavones in different sort of common soy foods.
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're right. I think people often get it 180 degrees wrong. So in a traditional soy food like tofu, soybeans, edamame, there are approximately 3 to 4 milligrams of isoflavones per gram of protein. So if you think of a cup of soy milk as having, let's say, 7 grams of protein, 8 grams of protein, then you can estimate isoflavone content pretty well. So it'd be 7 or 8 times 3.5, about 25 milligrams. So I like to think of a serving of soy as providing about 25 milligrams of isoflavones. I mentioned before that in Japan, typical isoflavone intake among older men and women is about 40 milligrams per day. So that'd be about 1.5 servings per day on average. Now, of course, you have at the higher end of the spectrum, you have people consuming 2 and 3 servings a day, but the average is about 1.5. So it's about 3 to 4 milligrams of isoflavones per gram of protein. Whereas in these more concentrated sources of protein, such as soy protein isolate and soy protein concentrate, by definition, they're 90% protein and 65% protein. So you take the bean. In the case of the isolate, you take the bean, you get rid of the fiber, for the most part, the carbohydrate, and the fat. You're left mostly with the protein. With the concentrate, it's about 65% protein. So those products, when they're made in the typical way, end up having about maybe 10 to 20% of the isoflavone content that you would find in a traditional soy food when expressed on a milligram per gram protein basis. So if you're consuming 8 grams of soy protein isolate, in most instances, you may only be getting anywhere from 2 to maybe wouldn't even be 8 in most instances, but let's say 2 to 8 milligrams of isoflavones. If you're consuming 8 grams of soy protein isolate, if you're consuming 8 grams of protein from soy milk, you're getting about 25. So and what you often see, and you referenced this or alluded to it, is you often see people saying when they're writing about the concerns about isoflavones, they'll say, well, consuming soy foods is okay, but stay away from the concentrated sources like soy protein, concentrate and soy protein isolate. And those are the ones that are actually low in isoflavones. So the Impossible Burger has 2 milligrams of isoflavones, which is nothing. I mean, there's 25 milligrams in a cup of soy milk. So if for whatever reason you were concerned about isoflavones, and again, I don't think there's any reason to be. The Human Day are very supportive of safety. The FDA reached that conclusion. The European Food Safety Authority reached that conclusion. But if you are concerned about isoflavones, what you would actually want to eat are these products made with these concentrated sources of protein. So I look at those foods primarily as sources of protein. Now, many of the clinical studies, in fact, almost all of them, actually have used the soy protein isolate and concentrate because in a Western population, if you're doing a 6-month study, it's difficult to ask someone to consume 2 servings of tofu per day who is not used to eating that type of food. Whereas with the soy protein isolate, you can put it in a beverage, add it to orange juice or any other beverage. You can actually use it to bake with, and then you can take a protein like whey or casein as a control protein. So the participants won't know which food they're consuming. If you're eating tofu, you're almost certainly not going to be blinded. You're going to know you're eating tofu. So most of the clinical work has been done with the concentrated sources of soy protein, and those are the products that have shown a reduction in LDL cholesterol levels. So Um, if you're looking for isoflavones, you go to traditional soy foods. If you're only concerned about protein, you can eat the traditional foods or the foods like the Impossible Burger.
Where does TVP fall?
That actually is, yeah, that's soy flour, and that would be rich in isoflavones because if you're looking at TVP made from soy flour, which is 50% protein, that's really just a defatted product, and that would be a product that would have a lot of isoflavones.
Just remind folks. So what would you say is the safe upper limit of soy isoflavone intake per day?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. So in free living populations in let's say Shanghai is a really high soy consuming region within China. I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn that not all regions in China actually consumes much soy. I mean, some consume almost no soy. It's very heterogeneous in terms of their dietary pattern. But Shanghai is obviously an urban area, very high soy consuming population. They're consuming about 40 milligrams, 35 to 40 milligrams on average, but there is a segment of the population, like 10% of the population, that's consuming about 100 milligrams of isoflavones per day, which is about 4 servings of traditional soy foods. So my basis for the limiting isoflavone upper limit is 100 milligrams per day for 2 reasons. One, there's no historical precedent for consuming more than that, based from Japanese population or Chinese population. Second, if you're getting 100 milligrams of isoflavones from soy foods, it means you're consuming at least 4 servings per day. And you don't want to consume more than 4 servings of anything. No one would say you should consume more than 4 servings of broccoli or kale. Everybody loves kale. It's a great healthful food. But you want to consume some kale, a variety of different vegetables. So my upper limit is not based on safety concerns. It's based on the dietetic principles of, variation and moderation. And when you look at the clinical studies, some of them there was a bone study from Taiwan, 300 milligrams of isoflavones for 2 years, no adverse effects. So you have data to show that isoflavone exposure beyond 100 milligrams is perfectly safe. But when you're thinking about a food, again, variety and moderation.
Right. Okay. So 100 milligrams a day as a kind of general principle. I might put a table into the show notes then that shows for the different types of soy foods on a per serve basis the approximate amount of soy isoflavones, and then people can get a feel for what that might look like a day on their plate kind of thing.